Welcome to a special presentation on one of the most pivotal moments in human history, D-Day. On June 6, 1944, one of the great turning points of the Second World War took place. Although the Allies had already achieved some great success in the fight against Nazi Germany, and moreover had already landed troops in southern Europe and had already liberated Rome, an invasion of Western Europe turned out to be the key to the liberation of Europe. In particular, the Americans and French continued to insist on an offensive in the West, while England preferred to attack from the south. Churchill said it was better to attack the soft belly of the crocodile than its hard snout. By this belly he meant an extension of the front in Italy. At the Tehran Conference, the Allies decided to relieve pressure on the Eastern Front by launching a major offensive in the West. In 1944, large groups of people and equipment were mobilized in England. It would be the largest military build-up to date. The purpose of this build-up, the operation was called Overlord, was a crossing to northern France. Initially Brittany was on the agenda, but this was later shifted to Normandy. Commanders of the operation were Dwight Eisenhower for the US and Bernard Law Montgomery for the British. 3 months before the actual invasion, the Allies had already started massive bombardments on the French and Belgian railways to hinder the supply of German soldiers and military equipment. Many bridges also had to suffer. In addition to the area around Normandy, bridges and railways around Calais were also destroyed to make the Germans believe that the invasion might take place there. Also on the coasts of England, many dummy military constellations were built. Cardboard and wooden vehicles and fake buildings. All this to give German reconnaissance the idea that preparations were being made for an invasion around Calais or Belgium. All preparations were made in the run-up to D-Day. D-Day, which is misinterpreted by most people as Decision Day, is a military term to designate the day of action if it is not already known. D-Day comes from the first letter of day, as is written in French, le jour J. The schedule is indicated in D+1, D+2, D+3 and so on. Initially, the invasion was planned for May 1944, but Eisenhower determined that it should be June 5. On June 5, however, a major storm raged in the Channel and the operation was delayed for 24 hours. General Eisenhower, despite the continuing bad weather, decided to have D-Day take place on June 6. 1944, okay. Well, go, he said. At night, British and American soldiers were parachuted behind the Normandy beaches to secure the routes from the beaches to the interior. After a large-scale bombardment and landing paratroopers in the middle of the night, the actual landings on the beaches started at 6:30 a.m. Nearly 7,000 naval vessels, including battleships, destroyers, minesweepers, escorts and assault craft, took part in Operation Neptune, the naval component of Overlord. Naval forces were responsible for escorting and landing over 132,000 ground troops on the beaches. They also carried out bombardments on German coastal defenses before and during the landings and provided artillery support for the invading troops. The left flank was made up of Gold, Juno and Sword beaches. These names had been given to the beaches by the Allied military. The right flank was for the Americans on Omaha and Utah beaches. The troops on the flanks had a fairly successful landing. However, the center had to deal with a lot of German resistance on Omaha Beach. This became the bloodiest area of D-Day and became known as Bloody Omaha. German defenses in Normandy varied in effectiveness. Germany tried to defend the northern coast of France with a series of fortifications known as the Atlantic Wall. However, German defenses were often incomplete and insufficiently manned. Members of the French resistance and the British Special Operations Executive provided intelligence and helped weaken defenses through sabotage. the Allied deception campaigns succeeded in convincing the Germans as late as July 1944 that the main invasion force would still land elsewhere. The threat of this larger, second invasion kept German reinforcements tied down away from Normandy. Defense also suffered from the complex and often confused command structure of the German army as well as the constant interference of Adolf Hitler in military matters. D-Day was an international effort. D-Day required unprecedented cooperation between international armed forces. The Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force was an international coalition, and although the Allies were united against Germany, the military leadership responsible for Overlord had to overcome political, cultural, and personal tensions. By 1944, over 2 million troops from over 12 countries were in Britain in preparation for the invasion. On D-Day, Allied forces consisted primarily of American, British and Canadian troops but also included Australian, Belgian, Czech, Dutch, French, Greek, New Zealand, Norwegian, Rhodesian and Polish naval, air or ground support. Nevertheless, at the end of the day the Allies managed to secure their positions in Normandy by landing more than 150,000 soldiers. In the days that followed, the fighting shifted inland around Caen. In any case, the beaches of Normandy were an open gateway to Fort Europe for the Allies.